All right, part two. Let's dive right in. So we left off at question 11. Question 12 and question 13 were similar questions. Both of them said, have you posted on social media or mentioned to a friend or family member about a specific business or employees at a specific business who did not adhere to the recommended safety guidelines? When it was asked about a specific business or employees at a specific business, 22% said they have, another 10% said they would, meaning a third of people have or would mention to a friend or family member or post on social media about a business that wasn't adhering to safe practices. The question 13 was the same question, but asking, have you posted or told a family member about customers at a specific business? Again, the would was around 10%. It was 8.4 instead of 10.4. So that's almost identical for the people that would do this. But the shocking number here is almost 10% more. 32.3 have said they've already done this. And the point here is, if you look at just the first question about if they're posting about employees of your business, what we're saying is basically you have a 1 in 3 chance of people posting about you negatively or mentioning to a friend or family member about the unsafe social distancing practices at your business. I mean, if somebody sees it, you have a 1 in 3 chance that they're going to post negatively about that. And it's a 4 out of 10 chance once you get to question 13, talking about the customers at a specific business. But the important point to remember here is whether they're commenting about your employees at your business or the customers at your business, they're still talking about your business. And when people are trying to decide where they're going to go, where they're going to shop, what they're going to do, if your name is associated with it, it's gonna hurt you. So that's something to keep an eye on. Question 14, this was a surprising one for me. Should it be the responsibility of the businesses to enforce the health and safety protocols within their business and remind customers to adhere to them? 69% said yes, 31% said no. That was surprising to me because as a chamber, we normally take the view that a business is responsible for everything that happens within a business. And I think if it were, talking about wet floors in a business or food guidelines in a business or exposed wiring or asbestos, that people would undoubtedly say, yeah, that's the business's responsibility, to enforce that within their business. But for some reason with masks, that there doesn't seem to be the case, which is, it's a little bit disheartening. It's a little bit disheartening that customers don't think businesses have that responsibility within their business. When as business owners, that's something that we all know and believe pretty much uniformly. Question 15 was interesting. So instead of doing a lot of open-ended questions to try to determine why, we ended up putting up 11 statements, and then we had an other category for people to put in their own answers. And the question revolved around when you see social distancing and mask wearing and other guidelines not being followed, what statements ring the most true for you? And we asked people to select as many as possible. They could select out as many as that apply to how they feel. So don't look at these responses as out of 100% of people, like they could only answer one of it. They could answer yes to all 11 statements if they wanted to. So really it's kind of, the way we have to look at these answers is, this is the percentage of respondents who said this statement fits them, because that's how it was. The top 4 were all pro-social distancing. The first one says, I will reach out to friends who I know who are high risk for infection and tell them to avoid that business. That is kind of exactly what was in question 13 and 14 of have you posted on social media or told a friend or family member. They say that they will reach out to high risk people. 41% of people said that. About 1,200 responses said that. The next 2 are very similar. I'll consider not returning to the business next time, and I won't return to that business in the future. So the distinction there is saying I won't go there the next time I go shopping. Where answer number 3 is I won't return to that business ever. And that's 28%. So you've got 28% of people saying I'm not going to return to that business. That's a staggering number. I will not return to that business next time was almost 40%, 39.6% of respondents. 27.3 said, I will leave that business immediately, which tracks with our earlier answers. And then number 5 and number 6 out of the 11 statements. Number 5 was, it doesn't bother me. Just under 25% of people said it doesn't bother them. And just over 20%, 21.4 said, if they force me to wear a mask, I will go somewhere else. And so that brings us to this interesting place where, yeah, there are 21.4% of the respondents who identified with, if they force me to wear a mask, I'll go somewhere else. Now, there are some businesses that are going to thrive on that 21.4% of people that feel that way about social distancing. But when you're doing a survey, you're trying to find the majority and what most people feel. And most people feel that, you can look at this question two ways. 78% of people, 78.6% of people didn't choose that statement, didn't feel that way. And so one of the things that we get caught up with, especially in the world right now, is saying, well, there's people on both sides, so it's really hard to tell who's right on this. And it's like, no, it's 79 to 21. I mean, that's a distinct advantage. That means almost 8 out of every 10 people feel like it is important, and 2 out of 10 say it doesn't. That's a staggering difference. And when we're looking at a survey, you got to remember nothing is ever absolute. There's always a percentage of people that are in the minority, on some of these questions. So yes, some businesses will succeed without social distancing, and even thrive that way. But most businesses can, and that's the point of the survey. The last thing I want to get to is questions 17, 18, and 19, which all basically asked a variation of the question, if there was a Maine community that took a safety pledge, and would you consider shopping there instead? The question reads, would you be more likely to shop and eat in that community, even if you had to travel, and then it was over 10 miles, over 25 miles, and over 50 miles? At over 10 miles, almost 50%, 49.3, said they would travel over 10 miles to shop in a safe community. Another 16% said that they would consider it. So 2/3 of respondents said that they would go 10 miles. When you get up to 25 miles, 27% say they would. An additional 27% say they consider it. So 54% of people say they'd go over 25 miles. And then even when you get to 50 miles, you've got 10% that said yes, and another 24% said they consider it. So even at 50 miles, you've got 1/3 of consumers that are willing to travel that far. The last thing I will say is when we broke down the age and the other filters, we saw that respondents over the age of 60 care very much about social distancing. When you looked at the most pro-social distancing answer on each question, and you compared it to the overall average. So we took all of the results, that was our baseline, and then we broke out these age groups to see where they fell compared to the overall average on the questions. What we found was the 60 plus age group was over the overall average by about 10 or 11% on average on all the questions, and no other age group fell above the overall average. Meaning it matters to the people that are 60 and over more than anyone else. The same rang true for people that know somebody with COVID and people that know someone in the high risk categories. All of those outperformed their counterparts. That's it, guys. If you want to read more, it is on our website in the blog section. Thanks.